G'day, fans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Talk and Stuff. It's cold, it's wet, winter is literally at our doorstep, and yet the two of us, Mr. Aaron and myself, are here to talk about sci-fi to warm the cockles of your very hearts. What do you reckon about that, Mr. Aaron?
I think cockles is one of those words we should never use on the show again. It's fantastic, isn't it? It's been a really cold day here today.
Yeah, well, it's just going to get a bit worse, actually. So hopefully, with a bit of luck, fans, we can come up with some interesting conversational pieces that will just like warm you up from the inside and make you forget about all the craziness that's going on in the world outside, which is particularly commonplace at the moment. So, Mr. Aaron, just very, very quickly, how's your day been?
It's been an interesting day. I've just been upstairs in the shop listing a lot of stuff online because it's the end of the month and I need to make money for rent.
Wackadoo. So there you go. Now, for those who are wondering, why doesn't Aaron just sell his body? Well, what can I say? There's only so many dollar bills he can handle being thrown in his direction. And of course, he doesn't take credit cards. So there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, dear, dear. Fun for the whole
Since
family.
they
Absolutely.
since they since they started not printing real money in FPOS, where do you give the money to strippers?
Well, that's exactly right. So there you go. Very, very cool. Anyway, we've got a big show tonight. We've got a lot of things to cover off. It's actually one of those things where early in the week it's very quiet, and all of a sudden this stuff just comes out of absolutely nowhere. And of course, now we mentioned this last week, and of course we've got to mention it this week. The big thing that's occurring this week is the Fandom United multi-club event that's being hosted by all the local fan clubs in Melbourne at the Austrek venue in Heidelberg. Should be an absolutely awesome day. Hopefully the heaters are working because it's only supposed to be 14 degrees on Saturday, but it should be very groovy. As you see there, kicks off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 5 in the afternoon. It should be an absolute blast. Yours truly, that is me, will definitely be there. So flying the flag. So be good to go along and check it out. The annual Fandom United gig, Mr. Aaron. How good is that?
Well, Well, Dags is being modest. He's actually helping run the auction, and I'm going to give a box of stuff for him to try and sell at the auction. I did see it was at the Plus X Catholic Church. If it's a fan thing, it should be at the X Plus Catholic Church.
Absolutely love it. Very, very cool. Yes, you know things are good, fans, when instead of buying a triple or quadruple XL t-shirt, you get one that's SM size, that's small marquee. Exactly right. Now, this one popped up today. This is just happening now. Once again, we're going to mention this one next week. For those who are going to Oz Comic Con next Saturday, not this one, obviously, because that's the multi-fan gig, but the one after, guess what? A whole bunch of us are going to be there yapping on about the Star Trek documentary that we're all involved with. Now, at this stage, I still believe that you're attending, even though your name's been covered up by the logo. Is that still correct, Mr. Aaron?
It's always the way. My face or my name is always covered by the logo. Yeah, I'll be there, and I'll probably even bring a giveaway prize from the shop for Star Trek action figure collectors.
Well done. So, for those who are going to OCC on the Saturday, the 8th of June, forget about the rest of the day. Turn up in the afternoon because our talk is actually being held at 4:15 in the Workshop Theatre. Which is in the Nerds Valley, something or other they got going. It should be a bit of a blast. So we're going to be chatting, all four of us, about the Star Trek documentary that we're all involved with, the action figure documentary, and it should be a bit of a hoot and holler. We get together and just have a bit of a Google on about the show. How good is that, Mr. Aaron?
It's fantastic. And anyone who hasn't seen it, you can look at it on our YouTube page or on the Facebook page. It's really worth watching if you're a Star Trek fan or you're a toy collector.
Indeed, Aaron, I want to eat your chocolate mint shirt. Oh, well, there you go. Well, the one thing about the chocolate mint shirt that Aaron's wearing, it's got a soft center. What can I say? Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So very, very cool. Yeah, so there you go. But I do like the idea of the mint chocolate. But the thing is, it's not mint because he's out of his box. What can I say? Boom, tish. That joke never gets old. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
I'm probably full of fudge.
Indeedy, doody, didy. Now, this is a couple of things worth checking out if you're a bit of a YouTube searcher. Aaron sort of discovered these and found these, and I had a bit of a look at a couple of them. One thing that is interesting about when we talk and stuff about sci-fi is going right back decades ago to see what was released when and what people talked about at the time. And you came across, believe it or not, a video from 1975 where this dude, this Geraldo dude, did an interview with William Shatner. And believe it or not, it's actually on YouTube. And at the bottom is the link just where you can find it. You just type it in, you'll dig it up. And what's fascinating about watching things like this is that, of course, in 1975, Star Trek had been off the air for like 6 years. There was no hint of the motion picture or the movies or Next Generation at this point, and it's just fascinating to go in the Wayback Machine to see how people treated Star Trek in the mid-70s. Remembering this is just not long after when the big Star Trek conventions first started taking place, and there's a couple of interesting pictures there. What do you reckon about this one, Mr. Aaron? Did that sort of like spin you right out, or what?
It did. It was interesting. I see. I sit and watch a lot of odds and ends on YouTube, but I sent this one to you because it showed a lot of fandom from the time, and you don't really see stuff as old as 75 that much. And it was really amazing to see, cosplay before the word cosplay existed, and some of the costumes which ranged from pretty accurate replicas to girls painted silver almost in G-strings kind of thing. So pretty accurate replicas from some episodes, I guess. And it was also interesting to see William Shatner, knowing that Star Trek was a phenomenon, but not knowing how big it was going to get in his future. And he almost seemed a little bit annoyed that they kept coming back to, is it coming back? Are you going to do a movie? And he kind of said, well, it looks like there could have been a movie TV special, but that's not going to happen. How wrong he was.
Yeah, and of course, he did mention the animated series, which would have been in production almost around this time. The thing is, they do show some footage from the actual Star Trek conventions of the 1970s, which was quite funny. Now, you were talking about the costumes earlier. I don't have it in this shot, but at the top right-hand corner, there's a guy, or I assume it's a guy, dressed as the Mugato from the original series. Looks absolutely fantastic. And if you're wondering what this picture is down here, right, you got the guys. I assume that's William Shatner right there. This woman walks up on stage wearing a mini skirt and just leans straight over the table and kisses him, right? And it's like, well, imagine if that occurred at a convention today, Mr. Aaron. It's like, how trippy would that be? Just walk straight up and bang, and don't worry about like flashing the wares. It's all good. Got the kiss of the lips, mate. I bet she never washed those lips again if she had known that for decades after this. Good old William Shatner be considered a massive legend. What do you reckon?
It is crazy. He was overwhelmed. He was talking about how he does different events, and he go to a Star Trek convention, and 10,000 fans were turning up to see him. And I did think, I don't think you've got a picture of it, I did think it was really cute. What brought the house down, there was a little 5-year-old dressed up as Kirk who went and did the cosplay and then stood in front of the audience of thousands and recited the Space, the Final Frontier monologue. And I thought, that just shows you how fandom sort of works at all different levels, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was actually very, very clever. I like this one. So we were talking about you being a mint chocolate earlier. You're a gooey center, not a soft center. I love that one. Now, Collins made a point about Shatner's shirt. Now, back in the 70s, browns and beiges were the go. And it does look very, very 1970s. You've got to allow for that, right? One day, decades from now, people are going to go, oh, my God, those people who dressed in 2024, they look like a bunch of tools. So, but he did look good for his age. Yep, go on.
The funny thing, though, Dags and I were talking about fans haven't changed how they look in all those years, have they?
Well, that's right. They do show some fans at that convention. They go, you know what? They could just time warp themselves to today, and they'd be still identical. So, anyway, if you get a chance, check out the document. The interview. It goes about 12 minutes. It's just a fascinating part of history. Speaking of a bit of history, this one just cropped up a couple of days ago, and this was done by the New York Times of all people. It's to do with not just Jake Lloyd, who played Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace, but the kid who came second. As you said, he wasn't the chosen one. He was the unchosen one. And there's actually a documentary video about the kid, who's now an adult, who came second. And there's like, how trippy is this, Mr. Aaron? And I've got to say, personally, when I saw the behind-the-scenes footage of Phantom Menace, I thought this kid should have got the role hands down. He was way better than Jake Lloyd, but he didn't. How good is this, Mr. Aaron?
It is interesting when you see this, because I do think he, by far, out of the different rehearsals they showed, or the casting videos they showed, I did think he was the one that was probably the best actor. And they even sort of say the casting director was let him down gently, but said George Lucas had his mind set on Jake Lloyd. So it sounds from them saying that they did think he was better, but George Lucas put his foot down and said, no, I'm going in this direction.
Yeah, exactly right. And the fact that someone has gone to all the trouble, the New York Times, to find this dude. I mean, I don't even know if the guy even acts anymore or what he does. And he actually says, yeah, I'm the dude. I'm 32 years old now. I actually auditioned for Anakin Skywalker. I didn't get it. Now, you said he got picked on in school because he didn't get picked. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that true?
It is crazy that, like, that he talks about Jake Lloyd says he got picked on at school because he was Anakin Skywalker, and then they brought out the special edition with the behind the scenes, and he got picked on at school for not being Anakin Skywalker. He is the only person in the world that really can, take credit for being picked on for not getting the Anakin Skywalker role, which he would have probably been picked on if he'd got it anyway. It's a lose-lose situation.
So the funny thing is, you can imagine this kid at sports, right? And if he loses, whatever becomes second or third, they go, mate, you're a loser in life. You're a loser in the sport. You're just a general loser no matter what. So you can imagine that would be definitely cannon fodder for sure. So, but how about that? So, and if you want to check that out, you can. It is interesting. I haven't watched the whole thing through, but the fact that the New York Times went to all this trouble to make a documentary video goes for about 16 minutes with this dude who came second. Remember what they say, coming second makes you the first loser. So, yes, exactly right.
Well, it's 16 minutes and it's still 10 minutes too long.
I've got to admit it is a bit long in that regard. Gavin said, didn't George say that there was a connection between Jake and Natalie? Yeah, well, that could certainly be the reason. So, but I thought just as an actor, I thought this, when I heard, because you see the auditions, and I thought, oh, this other kid's grouse. Why'd they pick Jake? So, but anyway, as it turns out, it didn't work for Jake in the end. Sure, he got the role and everything else, but his whole career went complete arse about after that. So,
Natalie Portman saw that video and go, my, haven't you grown?
Maybe would it be funny if Natalie Portman said, I told you, pick that dude. Why did you pick Jake? So, yes, exactly right. Absolutely fantastic. Anyway, so that's all we got regarding all that stuff. So, as I said, yes, if you get a chance, go to the big mini con on the weekend. It should be absolutely spectacular. But the big thing that occurred this week or last week, whichever it was, we did the trailer for this a little while ago, and the film itself came out, right? Good old Atlas. How cool is this? We're going to have a bit of a quick chat about the old Atlas movie that came out, the Jennifer Lopez film. It's on Netflix for those who have access to that. And it's interesting, not because of the fact that it's a bit of a bubblegum movie, it's a bit of a switch your brain off movie, but the core story behind it. So there are going to be spoilers. If you haven't seen it, block your ears now, look away, whatever. But it has a very interesting core concept behind it. Mr. Aaron, Atlas, I mean, is it like a map? Were you able to find your way through Atlas?
Yes, I was. The first part of the map was the opening of Battlestar Galactica. The second part of the map was James Cameron's Aliens. The third part was a little bit Avatar, and it had a Revenge of the Sith ending.
Nicely done. I like this one. I read the book, had a lot of maps. Yeah, exactly right. So the funny thing about Atlas, right? Take the fluff out of it, and it's great. It's an action movie. It's the whole thing, Jennifer Lopez and blah, blah, blah. You're right. There's a lot of parallels to a lot of movies. Its core thing about it, if there's one thing to make you think, it's pushing the whole discussion about AI. Now, in this instance, in this movie, they've turned AI into physical beings, right? And I've completely forgotten this guy's name. So they've introduced the whole AI into the people, and they've given them the programming. It's almost like the 3 laws of robotics. But of course, if they disengage that, and the AI, the artificial intelligence, sees how humanity is pretty much destroying the earth, how do they react? But it's asking that question, is what's occurring as of today with artificial intelligence and pushing the boundaries that they are, is that a good thing or not? Even though we know from the Terminator movies and all these other films where AI wants to take over the world, we know all that. I thought that was actually really an interesting element of it. So how did that work for you?
Well, you were a fan of Caprica, and I thought the first 10 minutes of this movie could have been the first series of Caprica, and it segues into Battlestar Galactica, where the AI uprises and then they force it off the planet, so it Junior Birdman's into space, and there's always the threat of it one day coming back. Did you notice, you said you didn't remember the names. I thought the names were all named after famous sci-fi writers. There was Harlan, who I presume was Harlan Edison, and there was a whole bunch of other ones where I was like, have they tried to be smart but just made themselves look real like idiots by naming after sci-fi writers that are much, much better than that what they've actually written themselves?
Well, it certainly could be the case. But I looked upon, I tried to see what the core story was about. And, one day, years from now, if artificial intelligence does get put into a humanoid body, or they create a humanoid body and they stick it in there, somebody may look back and go, in Atlas, they covered this off just like Ex Machina and various other movies. But I thought it was done rather well. And the one thing I did like is when they portrayed the actual artificial intelligence guys, to the best of my knowledge, they didn't blink and they didn't breathe. and I was very consciously looking at that, and I quite like that. So because they're on a planet where the atmosphere is toxic to humans, and I think they taught the actors to, when they speak, don't go blah 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 blah. Blah. They just blunt straight out. And I thought that really, really worked. And as I said, they don't blink and they've got, you know, special type of eyes. From that production, that side of things, I thought that worked out quite well. So they've gone past the uncanny valley, as it were, and to make characters as human looking as possible. So, but that side of it actually worked for me, even though there was a lot of fluff in between, the whole Jennifer Lopez thing and the fact that she runs around in this AI mech. So if you like your mechs, I mean, she's inside one of these like a power suit from Aliens, except it talks back to her. That kind of works, kind of doesn't, depending on your perspective. But how did you find it all, Mr. Aaron? Did it kind of push your buttons or not?
No, I found it so derivative and so poorly directed, I have to say. And then so many things that just annoy me, where, you know, if the link is working good, it's green, but as soon as it turns evil, it turns red. I mean, you do not have these things built into technology with the different lights to show you what's good and what's bad. And it's the same with the opening. They did a beat for beat scene of aliens when they come out of cryo sleep and she sits down and tells them what the mission is. And it's like directed by James Cameron if he had unlimited budget, so he could have all this CG crap walking around in the background, and couldn't direct, and was working with a singer rather than an actor with Jennifer Lopez. So for me, it was a big no. The planet looked like a video game when they were landing, and then the planet from space had no bearing in colors and stuff of when they actually landed on the planet. And did you notice in their sort of 15-minute trek across the planet, they went from weird stone trees to a grassy area to snow areas, and I was just like, wow, they're really pumping as much into this as they can fit.
Dude, speaking of pump and sink the boots in, son. I mean, give them some credit. The idea of so many science fiction movies where you land on a planet and it's entirely just one what's the term? Not the atmosphere.
Environment.
The environment is identical the whole way around. At least they said, no. It's got to be like Earth, right? You can have snow over here, trees over there, desert over there. Sure, they're really close together. But, I mean, how many, like, it's Tatooine is just all sand, right? Kamino is just all water, right? You know, Dune is just all sand, or Arrakis is just all sand. So, you know, I thought, oh, I didn't mind that at all. Geez, you really sunk the boots in. What I found interesting, hang on. I'm just going to this other part. What I found interesting is that whole thing when they put on the ear and they say, okay, you're now going to psychologically, freaking out, you're going to have a psychic connection to the machine, right? To the big robot thing. And I thought, who would really do that? You know, you understand the machine understands you. That's almost asking for someone to hack into the machine and then get into your brain and scramble your eggs. But there's a lot of people even today saying, I don't want to carry phones. I don't want to carry cards. How can I stick chips in my body? So I just walk up to the scanner and go click. It's probably the next evolution of that. So I thought that's an interesting concept. Sorry, I cut you off, dude.
Well, following what you're saying, and as soon as there's giant needles that go into the side of your head, nope, that's a big no for me. I did think that, you know, she was carrying around the chess piece. My guess was at the end, which was kind of true, that she was the one that gave them independent thought, and she was just going to do it so he would be better at chess with her. Turns out that wasn't the reason, so there's no spoiler there. But this is what I was going to ask you. What did you think of when the spaceship comes back down, it turns into pools of lava, and he's fighting with a faux lightsaber, and I almost expected him to say, I have the higher ground. I was just shocked how much of the imagery from this movie was ripped off from other things.
Yeah, look, there was, and that's the downside to a lot of movies these days where everything looks like you say, oh, I've seen that before somewhere else. I mean, look at this shot. This is straight out of Aliens, right? Now, if you want to sit and go, that's from this is from that, and that's fine. You can do that, right? But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to let it be as it is and just see what all the fuss is about. And I didn't mind it, right? You are right. In the end, you know, the good guys are going to win, the bad guys are going to lose. It's just how they do it. And I found, look, it was entertaining. It worked for me, but I liked the subplot underneath the story of the whole artificial intelligence thing. That really sort of worked for me. But yeah, you are right. In the end, it's just a bubblegum movie, and it's not trying to be something unique and spectacular. One thing I do like about a lot of sci-fi movies these days is how they portray the Earth. I mean, everybody does it differently now. Like if at the start of this movie you got this enormous Hollywood sign, the thing is gigantic, right? It's like 16 kilometers across, and how they show the cities. And, sometimes you look at a city and you go, oh, that's pretty boring. This one I thought kind of worked okay. So there were definitely aspects of this show that I thought, you know what? It works for me. I don't need to see it again. I'm cool with it. It's all good. There is a school of thought to say, was Jennifer Lopez the best actress for this role? What I looked at it, I thought, this reminds me of Gravity. If you saw that with Sandra Bullock, where she's on her own, ends up talking to George Clooney, but she's on her own trying to sort shit out, right? It reminded me of that. And I couldn't help but think, if you had taken Jennifer out and put in Sandra in, would that have just automatically ramped it up as being a better movie? So, yeah, and of course with Jennifer, she has to do a lot of talking in this environment by herself, just so the audience knows what's going on. So, yeah, that's right.
Would you remake Made in Manhattan with Sigourney Weaver? No. If you're gonna, there has been a few movies come out about AI and it going wrong. I would say, and it wasn't even my favorite movie, but I would say The Creator, which came out 6 months ago, was probably the superior one. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, but there is another alien invasion movie on Netflix that I was going to look at, but I haven't had a chance. But it came out like 5 years ago, and I think it's just been released recently. Aliens have been a part of, have invaded the Earth for a period of time, and you've got the human resistance fighting the collaborators. Probably not an original story. Most of these things usually aren't. It's how they execute them. So, for that regard, I thought, you know what? There are things that kind of it all gels. It's all one big happy family. But you are right, for the most part, it's pretty much forgettable. I like this one. Oh, the correct term is biome. Oh, listen, the Mr. Expert here. So how good is that? You went, you saw, you were disappointed. Well, you didn't have to go far. Just had to go in the lounge room over there and turn on the TV, which is good. Yes, Made in Manhattan in Space. Absolutely fantastic. And of course, yes, the old Mega Maid. Yes.
You know why
Sully's and blows? Huh?
You know why Sully's single? Because he keeps saying to girls, "Do you want to come back to my biome?"
Check out my biome. I've got a biome in my pants. And I'm not afraid to expose it. Oh, where are we going with that? Very, very good. Will's joined us. Will, you've jumped ahead of the argument. We haven't got to that topic of discussion coming up. You have to sit tight for another 10 minutes, all right? So there you go. So in the end, Atlas is a bit of fun. It's all good. But if you do want to sit and analyze it a bit further and look a bit more deeply into it and go, okay, could this ever actually happen? And would it happen? The answer is possibly yes. Because if an artificial intelligence was actually shown the Earth and how humans treat the Earth, their reaction would be, well, clearly humanity doesn't know how to look after it, so we'll take them out and we'll do a better job of it. And the chances are they probably will, at the expense of everything we know and exist with. So, what do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, I was also surprised at the start of the movie where they showed the robot revolt and you had people caught in like the car manufacturing and stuff where they pulled away from the violence. Then later in the movie, they just decided, no, we're going to show everything, and had heads popping and people getting blown away and stuff like that. It was very uneven in tone. I am being a bit mean about it. Any sci-fi that's got budget like this is probably worth watching, but it's a popcorn movie where you leave your brain in a tank at the door, like RoboCop 2 style, rather than thinking it's going to be a Dune level masterpiece.
Yeah, look, with no disrespect towards Jennifer Lopez, when you see a movie with her promoted in it, you'd be thinking, yeah, it's probably not going to be like the next 2001: A Space Odyssey. All things being equal, but yeah, it is a bit of fun. I know I enjoyed it. I watched it with my other half, and it was a good lark. And it was worth discussing here. Anyway, that's Atlas on Netflix if you want to check it out, which is very, very groovy. So there you go. Good stuff. All right, guess what? We're actually slightly ahead of time, which is probably good because our second or third discussion is going to be quite long. But before we get into the main discussion, we've got to do this.
A question.
Now, this one I've been thinking about for a while. And there's no right or wrong answer, and it's just purely a thought of opinion. And of course, this really isn't relevant to you or I to a large degree, but it doesn't mean we can't discuss it. Here's a question for you. Is it better for an actor to be famous for just one role or have a great career but not be famous? And the idea of that is that recently I was watching a documentary on Sam Jones from Flash Gordon. And effectively, he's only known for one role. Now, before anybody just jumps on the bandwagon and says, oh, but this actor was in this movie, They are that's fine. Their careers go places. I mean, Leonard Nimoy ended up directing movies and whatever else, and he was in all these other different TV shows. But they are known primarily for one role and one role only. And he's not the only. There are others as well. I was even thinking of Claudia Christian from Babylon 5 and whatever else. So is it better to be just famous for that one role throughout the entire career for decades? That's it. Or is it just, no, I'll just have a really good career just doing, and I'll show you a good example of that, of just being a dude who has a really good run of it, but isn't famous for anything. What do you think?
Yes, because I think it's probably better to be famous for one role than have no fame in your life at all. And I think what happens with actors, often they resent for a long time, especially if it's a TV series that they get associated with, and then it goes, and then all anyone wants to talk about after it's cancelled is that role for years and years and years and years, and they can't get any other role. But then I'm not an actor, but then, don't they say 99% of actors are out of work? So wouldn't it be better to have had that role? I mean, you look at, this isn't sci-fi, but you look at something like Grey's Anatomy, where the lead for that, it's been going for like 20 years. I mean, she's set for life because of that. It's probably better for her than her have said after 5 years, I'm giving this the arse, and then she goes back into obscurity. And the other thing is, a lot of people who resent their roles, you showed Leonard Nimoy there, who came out with the book I Am Not Spock, 20 years later came out with I Am Spock, because he realized that, being a part of popular culture, after he passes away, he will forever be remembered, and it's a legacy that not many people have.
So a couple of responses here for people. It depends on the money. It could depend on the financial benefits. And I'll stop there for the moment. I agree, but I don't agree. Not with you with that concept, because you are right. A lot of people, a lot of actors take on a show. It ends up becoming a massive success, and of course, from their career perspective, they say, "Well, I've done all these other things, but no one wants to talk about it. No one cares about it, or they can't find work in other things." And that's been out through the history of Hollywood. For those who remember the 1931 version of Dracula, the guy who played Renfield, right? He was typecast. They said, "Oh, we can't have you anymore in any other movies because we just know you as Renfield," right? It's like when comedians try to do serious roles and whatever else, they just can't get work. So it's all well and good to say, well, they've got money from what they've done. But decades later, the financial rewards may not be there. And you are right. Sometimes they have to embrace it. Adam West eventually said, "You know what? I've done all these other things and no one cares. I just have to be Batman and just got to deal with it." Sam Jones with Flash Gordon. And as you said, with Leonard Nimoy and Spock. So it depends on the perspective, I think, of the individual to say, yes, I want to broaden my career and be known for all these other things. And that's not going to happen. This is why I think Jim Parsons from The Big Bang Theory, his career is juicy fruited. He's always going to be known as Sheldon no matter what he does. It's going to take decades for him to get rid of that stigma. Even if he does appear in other things, he'll always be known as Sheldon. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, they have opportunities, especially in the sort of sci-fi fantasy field, that no other people have. When other people have reached retirement age, they have the opportunity to be flown all around the world, business class, talk for a weekend at a convention, sign and take photos with fans, and then there are many stories you can see them online where they get paid in cash and take 20,000 or 200,000 or $250,000 home for a weekend's work. I mean, that's a great retirement fund, isn't it?
That's if you're happy to accept that. And there are some people who say, "Well, I've been trained in Shakespeare and I've done stage work in England or whatever else, but I'm just known for this TV role that at the time was a piece of rubbish, and now I can't shake it." So I think it does depend on the perspective of the individual, and that's what Christy said up here. It depends if it's fame or infamy. And I mean, it's one thing to sort of be famous for a TV show or a movie for a period of time, but when it's decades afterwards, right? And it's like you just can't shake it. And there are stories, I mean, of people who, actors who said, "I couldn't get jobs anywhere else," and they've committed suicide and whatever else. It's a tough thing, and it depends on how they embrace it. So you do wonder which is the better option of the two. And I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It's up to the individual. But yes, I like the Leonard Nimoy thing to say, "Well, I'm not Spock," and then suddenly go, "All right, maybe I am Spock." I can just take over the team.
Yeah, I think as well. I think as well. Maybe in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, the industry was a whole lot different. When Barbara Eden was Jeannie, she did not know it was going to go into repeats forever. Whereas now, someone like Chris Hemsworth, who took the role of Thor, has said, I'll do Thor as long as they want to do movies because I love that. But then there's other Marvel, the Captain America, Chris Evans, who said, no, I definitely don't want to do it again because I don't want to be typecast as that. So it does depend on the person. But I think sort of the actors we're talking about that we grew up with probably weren't as aware of it as the actors now as well.
Yeah, true. And I didn't put the picture up, but Carrie Fisher falls into this category, right? Doesn't matter what else she's done. She's just known as Princess Leia. Mark Hamill would have been until he did the voice for the Joker in the Batman series, which is what Gavin's mentioned here. Voice actors can get away with it because you can walk around the supermarkets and nobody recognizes you. So it's a completely different thing. Will has mentioned on a completely unrelated note, Ed Neal from Married with Children. Ed O'Neill, sorry, from Married with Children comes to mind. Now, here's an example of one I want to bring up. Christy said Jim Parsons was in Hidden Figures in the space race, right? And I saw him, and my only thought was Sheldon. That's exactly what I'm saying. You can have these actors appear in different shows, and unless they do something really radical with their voice or the way they look or whatever else, you're just going to go, bang, I know who you are straight away. And it's hard to shake that sort of like image. Now, Harrison Ford could easily have been typecast as Han Solo back in the 70s, but he was able to break the mold. And now he's known for all this wonderful stuff. Hugh Jackman, of course, is the same. He appears in Wolverine, in X-Men, and his career has just gone from all over the place. Natalie Portman is the same. So there are plenty of actors who've really done well, but there are some, they're just stuck in the rut. And you do wonder how they sort of cope with it. So, yeah.
But is it stuck in the rut if they're happy to do that?
That's a good point. And the con circuit thing, maybe something that they go, you know what, I have to go to another one. I really don't want to. Or you could be a person who goes, you know what, I love it. I thrive on it. It's what I want to do. I guess you just have to accept it in your head. If you're an actor thinking you've got this long career ahead of you and you kind of don't, it could be a different situation. A few comments. If you're a jobbing actor in a ton of shows, you might be making a nice living because you can be world famous for a year or two and get stuff for the rest of your life. That's exactly right. And yeah, it's an interesting scenario. I haven't said Amelia Clark. No, I wouldn't thought so. I think Amelia Clark's doing it right. And younger people, it's a different story, right? We're talking about people decades from now, right? When their careers have just not gone really far at all. They do other work, but it doesn't go anywhere. Like today, for example, I was watching an episode of Castle, believe it or not, the very first pilot episode of Castle, and Keir Dullea was in that. Now, he plays Bowman from 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you see Keir Dullea in anything, you just think straight away Bowman from that movie, and that was made in 1968. Right? He is never going to be anybody except Bowman, regardless of what he does. So, but he might be okay with that.
It is one of those things that's interesting as well, because it doesn't just happen to lead actors. You'd get someone like the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files that was only in, a tenth of the series, and that will be who he is for the rest of his life. I mean, it sometimes, if a character has a saying or something, they'll probably be called that from across the road forever, even if it was only said in one episode kind of thing of something that they're in. So it is an interesting thing. The other thing as well, they have this opportunity which a lot of people don't have. Say you were a director on the original Star Trek. I could name one or two, but not many. They might have directed 30 episodes and never get an invitation to a convention, but you get someone who was in a silver miniskirt in, one episode of Star Trek, and she's taking photos with fans for the rest of her life.
Yeah, that's because in front of the camera is always different to behind the camera, and there's only a handful of behind the camera people who are world famous, right? Most of them are just completely
I'm just saying that's an opportunity there that you get typecast, but it is also an opportunity if you use it, if you choose to use it. I could imagine it totally annoying some people as well.
Yeah, and of course, there's a slightly different discussion regarding child actors. There are your Macaulay Culkins of the world who just rake in the millions of millions when they're a kid, and when they become an adult, they're almost like forgotten. Now, throughout history, there's been ones that have transitioned really well. Mickey Rooney was one. Roddy McDowall was another. Elizabeth Taylor was another. Their personal lives, we're not talking about that, sort of went a bit arse about. But their professional lives, they were able to transition from child actors to adult actors. And of course, we were discussing this earlier, just coincidentally, funnily enough. And of course, you look at Jake Lloyd, right? Now, regardless of what he does for the rest of his life on this planet, right? He'll always be known as Anakin Skywalker, and he probably hates it with an absolute passion. And you'd almost want to say to the guy, what you need to do, dude, is get back into the acting biz, get some different roles, and break the stereotype, not be known as Anakin anymore. And you'll know that will occur if you do go to a pop culture event and people put photos in front of you of these other projects that you've worked on, not just Star Wars. It's a tough one to do, but it is potentially possible. So,
well, imagine if you're a child actor and you have the stigma of being Steve Urkel or someone like that for the rest of your life. And can you imagine this at the Macaulay Culkin's household when he turns 18 and he says, "Where's all my money from Home Alone?" And his parents go, "We spent it all." And he's like,
"Spent it all." Daniel made a message. Yeah, Drew Barrymore is a very good example. Went from child actress into adult actressing, and found fame doing that, which is really, really good. So, unfortunately, it does happen, and I guess it's tough, depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve. This next example got it even worse than Jake Lloyd. It's like freaking Ahmed Best. It's like, mate. How cursed is this guy? Even if he did appear as Talaran Beck in The Mandalorian or whatever it was, it doesn't matter. He is Jar Jar Binks forever. And I was just like, dude, you have just screwed your entire career for the rest of your life. And that is so sad. Yeah.
Do you know what
as soon as someone goes, "Moi, love you," you must just want to freaking go postal.
What I'm waiting for is the video on the guy who was rejected and couldn't play Jar Jar Binks. Now that's an insult. I wasn't good enough to be Jar Jar. You do wonder. You were talking about child actors, how someone like Eleven from Stranger Things will go. Now she's trying to break into other things because you don't know yet. She has been in other stuff, but probably, I don't know if Enola Jones and some of the other stuff will ever be, able to overtake 11, especially if they're making another series.
See, I don't think she's got a problem. We're talking about Millie Bobby Brown. So she plays 11 in Stranger Things, as you said, and it's great. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. And as you said, she's doing all these other things now. I think years from now, 10, 20 years from now, it'll just be chalked up amongst one of the things that she's done. She's clearly got a path that she's going down, and she's going places. I don't think it'll be an issue. Some of the other actors, though, it might be an issue. You might say, well, that kid who grew up in the show, they're just known for Stranger Things, and they just can't break out of it. So using the classic example from Star Wars, so you had Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman standing side by side in Attack of the Clones. And if you were to say, which one of these two who's going to have a career that they're going to be stratosphere stuff, winning Oscars and whatever else, and the other one who's just going to be known as this one character, bang, you would probably never pick. It was going to be Natalie Portman who was just going to go take off. And of course, but that's what's happened. She is not known as Queen Amidala. She's known for all these other roles that she's done. Hayden, on the other hand, he's Anakin Skywalker. End of story. So, but he might embrace that. I don't know. Yeah.
That's because people mistake Natalie Portman as an angel.
Well, that's exactly right. So, very good. The kid who was the only acting role was Charlie in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah, that was from the early 70s, I think. Is a vet.
Yeah.
As clients asking for autographs. Oh, yeah, there are some actors who go, you know what, I've done my bit. The lady who played Newt from Aliens, Carrie Henn, she left acting after that, right? So she's an adult now, and like, good for her too. Not everybody needs to stay in the biz, and some people get out of it, and they get out of it at the right time. So
the kid from Dick Tracy, he was asked to do acting roles after Dick Tracy, and he actually turned them down and said, "I just want a normal childhood. I really didn't like the experience."
Yeah, totally agree. As Daniel said, Millie is great in Enola Holmes, and her career's definitely got a path that she's going to go down, and it'll be absolutely spectacular. And of course, the funny thing, just mentioning Hayden Christensen, of course, he was kind of like blacklisted from the whole Star Wars franchise for 20 years, and now he's come back, and that's just made it even worse. So even though he's done other movies like Jumper, I think it was, it's like, yeah, sorry, dude. And that's just one example of a lot of examples, which is really unfortunate. But I'm going to show you an example just on a completely different perspective of an actor who has appeared in a million different shows. No one knows who his name is. No one gives a rat's ass about him, but he pops up everywhere, and he would come under the heading of someone whose career has just flourished. And of course, it's this guy, Eric Avari. Movies, TV shows, he is everywhere, right? He's everywhere. Eric everywhere, right? Now,
Yeah.
he's not an A-lister by any stretch. He's not a star in any of these shows. He's just plays character roles in these movies and TV shows, in pop culture ones. Everybody recognizes him. Everybody knows him. He never changes his look, right? But he's one guy whose career has just gone from strength to strength throughout for the next past 20-something years. And I'll tell you what, he's an example of someone who says, you know what, I don't need to be typecast because I've got a great job doing what I'm doing. And I love this guy because when he pops up, we go, oh, not again. And he always looks exactly the same. Unbelievable.
Like,
how trippy is that?
That's good because, sometimes when you see a TV show or a movie and an actor comes in and they're always cast as a bad guy, even though it's a mystery, that they're going to be the bad guy. But he has played diplomats, terrorists, aliens. You just don't know what you're going to. He's been in comedy as well. He plays different races. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the opposite. But again, not many people would actually know his name.
But you don't need to know his name. I didn't know his name. I had to look it up, but I know what he looks like. And as maybe from his perspective, the world is good. It's exactly as he wants it to be.
Sometimes you need to go where everybody knows your name.
Well, exactly right. Cheers to that. Very, very good. All right, so I've got a whole bunch of comments coming through. Here we go. The other classic actors in the series that they are it and a bit. Yeah, there's a long story about that. Leave the series seeking fame and fortune only to fall on their face. MASH is a perfect example of that. McLean Stevenson, Wayne Rogers, they all left to find other careers, and they actually regretted leaving MASH. And of course, Denise Crosby from first season of Next Generation, wanted to come back. Sorry, we've killed you off. You're gone and done and dusted.
You don't blame her for that because it doesn't get that good to series 3. Rule hadn't really been set up then, had it?
Good point. Daniel said Ewan's career kicked off after Phantom Menace. It did actually not. She kicked off before that when he did Train Spotting and all those sort of movies. So he was already a bit of a named person. It put him on the map as far as the Star Wars universe was concerned, but his career was always going to go ahead. He can show you all these different things that he's done, and that wouldn't be an issue. Yes, you are right. Eric was, of course, in Stargate. Once again, he just looked exactly the same as he does now. Sid Haig was a bit like that. Yes, here we go. Moneybags has said Stargate SG-1. No, it wasn't SG-1 at this point. It was a Stargate, the movie, The Mummy, definitely. Yep. He was also in Planet of the Apes, the Tim Burton version. Looked exactly the same as he does now.
Wasn't he one of the few actors from Stargate that was in the movie and then went over to the TV series as well?
I could be wrong. I never watched the TV series, so I could be wrong. So if you did, good on him. So which is very, very good. But that's really cool. So for those out there who are budding actors or actresses and go, well, I want to get my career in this. Sometimes you take a role and you go, this is going to put me on the map. And unfortunately, it's like Atlas. Not only does it stick you on the map, but you just stay on that map forever. And I think it's very, very sad. So, hang on. So yes, he was. Okay, in SG-1. Sorry about that. All right, fair enough. So yeah, it's a tough one. David Duchovny from X-Files.
He did a lot of Californication after X-Files, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly right. So no, maybe not. Gillian Anderson, maybe, but I don't know, maybe not. So, but some people
they are definitely known for those roles. If you went to a convention with Gillian Anderson and there were photos to get signed, you're not going to get her Margaret Thatcher photo signed, are you?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, you can argue that with like I forgot her name. Don't worry about it. Not important. The lady who played Buffy. I've just gone blank. Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Known for Buffy, even though she did appear in other things. So who knows? But yes, very, very good. So best of luck to them out there. All good, all groovy. So there you go. Okay, so he left and then came back. All right, good for him. Well done. What do you reckon of that, Mr. Aaron? Very exciting stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, that was an interesting topic, yeah.
Speaking of interesting topics, now, Will posted something about this like right at the start of the show. It was too early, but now's the time to repost it. Will, special editions for movies, are they necessary? And what brought up this topic is one movie in particular, and you look at it and you go, what the hell's the deal with that? There's like 6 or 7 versions of freaking Blade Runner. It's like, if you're going to watch a movie and you say, I want to watch Blade Runner, which one do you watch? Dude, what is the deal with having so many versions of the same film? What is the go?
I don't know. It's one of those things. I think part of it is the studio trying to get more money out of the same movie over again. I think part of it is the studio might not have confidence in a movie when it is originally being filmed. And then when it's a bigger hit, they give them more money to the director to go back and give him a more clearer version of his vision. That does not happen much, but it does with the movies we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, exactly right. So I can finally post this thing from Will from way at the start. Many special editions, such as the Abscess, Terminator 2 Star Wars, are actually very good special editions. Whether they're good or not is not actually the comment, is not the question. It's the question of whether they're necessary. Now, what you just said, right, regarding Close Encounters, regarding extra money, that's exactly why they did a Close Encounter special edition, right? Spielberg didn't even want to do it. They said, oh, no, do a version where you see more of the inside of the ship, right? Was it necessary? No. Did you need it? No. Did the film suck when it first came out because there wasn't enough interior shots of the ship? No. So there's got to be explanations as to why special editions and or director's cuts and whatever else get created. If it's purely from a financial point of view to make more bucks out of the show, that's not really the right way or the right motivation to do it from the audience's point of view, because you don't want to be stuck with a scenario when you go, well, I love this particular version. Now there's another version and another version. And I guess once you go past 2 or 3 different versions, you go, all right, now it's getting out of control. When you got 2, fair enough. Star Wars is a good example. There's like 5 or 6 versions of that now, right? With the DVD version, the special edition version, the Blu-ray version. Freaking hell, it's all bullshit. It's like, no, just stick with the original. So it's a question as to are they necessary for the person watching the show.
Well, it's not quite true with the Close Encounters. What happened? The studio thought it was going to be a bomb, and they actually sold a lot of the rights overseas because they were using it as a tax write-off. And when it made money, Spielberg had wanted to do more scenes, but they couldn't do them. And he asked if he could do them, and they said, we'll only let you do them and reissue it if you show us the inside of the spaceship at the end. And he actually hated that ending. He didn't want to show that at all. And what even made it even worse, when they released it on video and DVD, you couldn't get the original version, which was the version he preferred, for about 30 years. And then when the DVD came out with multiple versions, there was a third version he prepared, which was a mix of the special edition and the regular edition. But I appreciate it because on that DVD, you can see all the different versions, so you can pick and choose. What you're saying about Star Wars, though, is absolutely correct. You don't need 5 or 6 different versions of a movie. I think it was George Lucas, I could be wrong, said movies and art isn't finished, it's just abandoned and you move on to the next project. And he's in the unique position to go back and fix his vision. But his vision is never 2020. He goes back again and again and again and fixes it. And often, I think the more they try and fix it, the worse the version actually gets.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Even Will said about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 3 versions, original, special edition, director's edition. Same with Blade Runner. Blade Runner's got more than that now. I thought I've got to chuck in one of these. A fun factoid. Hang on, I've actually lost where it was now. Hang on, I've lost it. Don't run away, fans. Oh, here we go. C3K was the first special edition, director's cut, etc., and killed off that trend. Yeah, well, you can thank the video market. I think the video market sort of allowed it all to come back. I mean, CE3K, of course, was in the cinemas at the time. It wasn't until video, DVD was much later, that I think you are right. The studio said, oh, hang on, we can now do different versions. It's one thing to do, I think, a director's cut, because there are a lot of directors who don't get the final cut of their movies and the studios re-edit them. And they go, well, hang on, can I do a version that the way it should have been? Versus a special edition where someone says, here's just shuck in all the deleted scenes. And it's like, how good will that be? Fans have got to re-buy it all over again. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it kind of doesn't work. For the most part, though, it works because you get to see more stuff, and that's great. But if you're a person who goes, oh, do I have to buy it again? You do wonder if the motivation behind it is actually there. So,
well, the thing that used to happen in Hollywood, which is quite sad, really, is if a movie was a big hit, like now a movie comes out, makes all its money in the first weekend and then peters out. In the old days, the rental of a print would go from one city to the other. It wasn't shown everywhere at the same time. And what would happen if a movie got reissued, the cinemas would say, do you know what? We'd love it to be 20 minutes shorter so we can fit in an extra screening a day. And you get movies like Lawrence of Arabia and King Kong and things like that, and Metropolis even, that are cut down and cut down and cut down. And the studios don't even keep the footage. And so
Mm.
years and years later, you have these restoration projects where the only version you can get is the cut down version, and everyone's hunting for the footage to see if they can restore it just to get the original version back.
Indeed. Did Spielberg actually say that he actually, at the time, it sounded like a special edition was his idea? That's a question for you, by the way.
Well, at the time, they didn't have any confidence in Close Encounters making money, even though it was Spielberg and even he'd made a ton of money for him. So they kind of said, "This is, you have to finish, and it has to be in the cinemas by this date." And he did that, and he delivered the movie, and then it was a massive success. And the year later, they wanted to reissue it because they used to reissue all the big movies, Star Wars and Jaws and all that, year after year after year. And to get the hook of get people back, it's even in the advertising. And this time you see inside the spaceship. And Spielberg wanted to fix it to his vision. And he said he'd only come back, and the studio said they'd only let him do that if he filmed the spaceship stuff at the end. And that's what happened.
Okay. So Daniel said, would you call the Alan Smithy version of Dune a special edition? You would, actually. It was actually originally meant to be a TV version. TV versions are a different discussion, but the principle is still the same, where a different version of the movie comes out for TV. Now, why they make it for TV, allowing for the fact that some movies have bits edited out for violence and language and whatever else, you do wonder what the motivation is. And a good example of a TV version of a movie that came out a long time ago, and they eventually did release it as per normal, was, of course, the Superman version, the 3-hour version, which just barely fit on a videotape, if you remember that. Now, the TV version of that is way better than the theatrical version, but it's just all the deleted scenes added back in. So in some instances, yes, it does work.
The reason for that was they used to show them over 2 nights, and to get like the maximum advertising rates, if they got more runtime. So they did used to prepare them. It would be one of the studio editors that go back. They'd sometimes put extra music cues on them and stuff like that. So there was a little bit of work put into them, but they were often only shown once or twice. And people have these hazy memories of scenes that they saw as a kid and then they never saw again. My favorite deleted scene ever, and I still don't know if it's available on any of the DVD releases, is from the TV version of Superman 2, where the supervillains go and kill that little country town, and Nod likes colorful things, so he pulls the cone off a police car, and then a little kid whose name's Jody goes riding off to go and get help, and Zod says no, he disobeyed Zod, so Nod throws it, and it kills the kid on the bike who's riding off. And as a little kid, that was unusual because you never see kids get killed in movie. And his mum says to Ursa, he was only a boy. And Ursa turns around and says, now he'll never be a man.
Become a man.
And that's right. Nowhere. You can't find that anywhere.
Yeah, exactly right. You've mentioned C3K was perfect the first time around. I do wonder for some movies where you're thinking, well, you don't need to change it. It's okay the way it is. But for whatever reason, they do come out. Now, there's a good comment here. Would you consider a special edition as the same thing as a director's cut? No, except in the version of Blade Runner. Again, so a special edition is something a studio said, nah, chuck all these bits in, resell it, make lots of money, yay team. The director's cut is clearly when the director, as I said earlier, the director said, well, I didn't get final cut. Someone else chopped it up and released it. Now I get a chance to put my stamp on it. The difference is, of course, regarding good old, say a good example of that, by the way, just going to chuck this picture. It is the special edition for the motion picture, which is absolutely spectacular. The best example, of course, is the director's cut of Blade Runner, where Ridley Scott really wasn't involved that much at all. He just had all his notes left aside from whenever, and someone else, the studio, put that together. And that's the reason why I ended up doing the final cut. And it's like, bloody hell. Well, so the director's cut is the director's cut.
The other example that's funny is when they put the Alien quadrilogy together, Ridley Scott comes back, puts in the extra scenes, does a special edition. James Cameron had already done a special edition, so they released that. David Fincher gives them the middle finger and says, I'm not changing anything. I had such a bad experience. So they put the assembly cut, which was his sort of rough cut before they got to the video release. What I do love about the digital format is you can have all the different editions, and that makes George Lucas' decision particularly annoying, where he says, now there's a new edition, all the other editions you can't have anymore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Now Russell's on the ball on this one. They did the same with Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but they used extra scenes without proper effects, so Kirk is flying past wooden girders. That's actually very true. It was for the video release. I do remember it now. They did the special edition, and it was just really, really poorly done. And because they had no money, I think they just got extra bits and they just shoved it in. And of course, it's a widescreen movie. They hadn't really done all the effects properly. It was horrendous, right? But it was meant to have these extra sequences that you go, oh, I didn't see that in the theatrical version. Maybe it's a way of fixing all the problems from the original movie. So if you're going to watch a version of the motion picture, you've got to watch the director's cut. But yeah, for anybody who's got the special edition on video of motion picture, they will be somewhat disappointed because some of it is actually really poorly done. So
And then
unbelievable.
you've got like a phenomenon I think really only happens with horror movies. I guess with you're saying with the motion picture, it happens there, where the studio edits stuff out, and then years later they're like, well, now it's a massive cult following. We want to release it with the extra scenes, and they've destroyed it all. But the visual effects artists have often got a video of what they originally had and what was cut out. So they'll do an edition, a special edition, and it drops down in quality to video quality because the only copies left of the missing material is the video quality, and that's not a particularly, I guess, enjoyable watch. It's more of an interesting watch for fans to see what could have been, but until the original footage is found, and it never will be because it was just straight bin straight away, that's the only copy that exists.
Very true. Now, there's an example here of the THX 1138 director's cut. Now, what's interesting about this is instead of getting deleted scenes and sticking them back in, they actually refilm new bits. And that's a
Yeah.
completely different scenario altogether. Where they go, well, hang on, this part we need a joining bit that doesn't exist anywhere, so we'll just film it and stick it in, make it look like it was actually from that era. Motion picture is very, very similar from a visual effects point of view. And that's a completely different can of worms. I mean, they obviously did this with Star Wars, the special editions, where they filmed new bits and shoved it in. And it's a bit of a mind spin. You go, where was this footage? I haven't seen this at all ever in any deleted scene. It's because it's not. It's all brand new. So you can wonder, how far do you go with your special editions before you stop tinkering with them? I'll film extra bits on top of the extra bits. I'll make the thing 6 hours long because I love all these extra bits. I don't know. So, and in the end, fans will say, just give me the original version, and be done with it, and yeah, leave it at that. So, it's
what I often find, if the original director wants to put original footage back, like I guess Apocalypse Now Redux or the James Cameron movies, he's done that with a lot of his movies. I often think that it does improve the movie. I do think though, when they start filming new stuff, if they didn't film it originally, do they need to do that? I don't know. I often think those are the ones that don't really add much to the movie.
Yeah, and as we saw with Star Wars, they can sometimes detract from it. Ads has asked about Alien 3 coming into the mix. The funny thing about Alien 3, right, after its complete debacle, its theatrical release, and it was a complete dog's breakfast, they did produce a special edition where they changed the concept from the alien coming out of a dog from coming out of an ox. People who have watched the special edition of Alien Cubed have said it's fantastic, it's great, it's wonderful, but the problem is the damage is done. Right?
Yeah.
History has already wiped it from the face of the earth. It doesn't matter how good it is. It could be Oscar quality, Oscar winning quality. It doesn't matter. People are just going to remember when they saw it in the cinemas, they said it was complete garbage. Move along. And so sometimes trying to fix the problems after the fact is just not going to get you anywhere. Cinephiles, fans of the franchise, might go, that is awesome. I'm so wrapped. But even if they stood on a building with a big banner saying, watch Alien 3, the special edition, it's the greatest film ever, no one's ever going to do it. So it's sad,
But
but it's true.
it's not. It's only slightly better. It's just because it's slightly better, everyone goes, "Oh, this is amazing." I would agree. I would probably disagree and say, even though there's more in the special edition or the assembly cut, the original theatrical version is better, just because at the end you see the face hugger come out of Ripley, and in the director's cut or the assembly cut, you don't. And I think you kind of do need that. So. But you can argue about these things forever.
Oh yeah, to a degree, I'm being a little bit facetious. I mean, the thing about Alien 3, it should never have been made. Finish after Aliens, leave it at that. There are some examples of extended versions that are considered to be like the only version to go to, and of course, not necessarily the Hobbit trilogy, but definitely the Lord of the Rings. There are sometimes they go, you know what, theatrically we just couldn't fit all the bits in, so they stick them all in for the DVD release, and you go, you know what, that is the only version to go to, and that's great to see. But yeah, there's nothing worse when you do end up with a version of a movie and you go, you know what, the extended version is great, but I'll go back to the original every day of the week. So individual choice, I suppose. So, what do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Peter Jackson is really smart, where he aimed at making 3.5-hour movies for the DVD release because he knew he'd sell them, and then they cut them down for the cinema. And then the opposite of that is true for The Hobbit, where it wasn't enough material, and then the extended editions just make it even worse. So it is really, you don't know what you're going to get with a special edition.
Yeah, exactly right. Very, very cool. Anyway, look, that's it. We're going to finish up now. So our hour is up. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed that particular conversation. Before we go, as always, for those who haven't done it already, be sure to check out the Sci-Fi Zone socials on YouTube and whatever else. New stuff coming out all the time. It's very, very exciting. And just like what we had discussion, if you want to talk about special editions, what's the most special edition thing that's going on at Aaron's store? Aaron's going to be there. How good is that, Mr. Aaron?
Yes. I'm there. I'm usually hiding upstairs at the moment, sorting out stock. But if you push Chad hard enough, I'll come down and say hi if I'm not in the shop and you want to see me. But yes, I'm sure after this has finished, you'll upload the special edition onto our YouTube channel as well. It's got 20% added special effects.
Yeah, in other words, it's got 20% more of you and 20% less of me, which is the way to go. Yes, very, very cool. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back, obviously, next Thursday to chat about stuff a bit more. Hopefully, the weather's a bit nicer instead of this cold, miserable stuff we've got at the moment. But otherwise, in the interim, make sure you party hard, rock on. Don't forget Docky Who's coming out in the next couple of days. You've got to check that out. We'll be back next Tuesday to talk about that. Otherwise, Mr. Aaron, you party hard, and I'll see you very, very soon.
Have a good night, guys. See you.
Bye.